Indeed, I have had a large number of complaints about the title of this talk. Is it about engineering? Is it about documentation? Yes. I feel those two things go together. So hi, I'm Lorna. I work in developer relations for a company called Aiven. We do amazing data open source platforms in the cloud. I'm not talking about those today, but feel free to talk to me about any of those things around at the event. My background is in software engineering. I am a published author. I do like to write words, but really I'm a coder, and that is how I would describe myself for sure. We're going to talk about engineering, and we're going to talk about documentation in this session. I'm going to try and pick up on a few different themes around the people that have got involved in the projects that I work on and how I approach that, the different tools that I'm using, because I'm guessing we might have some geeks in the room, and also something about the open source aspect. In particular, although I'm giving general advice, you can look up docs.aiven.io for a good idea of what I have been working on recently. Luckily, I did not include any screenshots of the site in my talk because they launched a new theme yesterday while I was on the train. So it's truly a joint effort, and we'll talk more about that. Let's start with the engineering. Engineering is about solving problems, and it's about helping people. That's what attracted me to engineering in the first place. And when I think about engineering, I think about creating a great experience for humans. A great experience both for the people reading the documentation and engineering a great experience for the people who are part of the project, who contribute to it in some way. It's really all about developer experience, contributor experience. People keep on telling me that engineers don't like to write documentation. I dispute that. I think engineers don't like feeling that they're not making impact. If you're not expert in doing something, like engineering something big or writing documentation, it can take a lot of effort. You're not familiar with this. You're not practiced at this. You don't have skills in this space yet. So it's a big effort to write documentation. And if you don't understand that you're making a big impact and that there's a big return, you can feel like you're wasting your time. All developers are lazy, all developers are efficient, all developers are looking to do the most they can with the least that they have. And that's my theory about why sometimes documentation isn't a great experience for developers. Documentation is amazing because it's the best way I know to improve a developer's experience of any product. So really, engineering well is about developer productivity and about developer experience. Documentation is the most highly scalable way I know to improve customer success. When you write something down, that customer doesn't need to find you, get on a call, make an appointment, get the right person, ask the right question. Those resources are available and they can always find it. I come to this as a self-taught writer, really. I'm a blogger. My words have gone far beyond even the biggest conference room audiences that I've ever met. I'm going to try to give you some advice today that will work for different kinds of documentation. So yes, I have my Docs project as the sort of the vehicle for the story, but whether you write on an internal wiki to share with colleagues, your own blog, you're creating tutorials or product documentation, I hope there's something here that helps you think about the way that you do those things and how you could make it better for the contributors as well as for the consumers. The documentation is the product in a lot of ways. It's one of your products, and it needs a cross-disciplinary team to work really well. It can be such a challenge to bring together people with different areas of expertise. My background's in software engineering, but I now report up through marketing, which is fascinating. I work with a whole load of people that I call experts of other disciplines. They are expert in something, it isn't this. So they are creating content, maybe documentation, maybe blog content about quite complicated open source cloud data services. They don't know what the words mean. So in order to enable them to do their best work, we need to open the door and show them a little bit of our world. I've been running a weekly session at Aiven called Let's Talk Aiven Tech. It is a highly sophisticated experience. I have a repeating appointment in my calendar, which is public. Anyone can join. It has a wiki page. You can write down what you want to know. And every week, I show up, talk about the chosen topic for an hour with usually no preparation at all, answer any question that anyone wants to bring, and then pick the topic for next week. This is amazing because while I wish that we could develop appropriate and detailed internal curriculum for all the different sales and marketing people that need to work on our platform, yeah, fundamentally, we're a hypergrowth startup. That is never going to ship. But I have an hour a week and I have knowledge in my brain. So yeah, I answer the questions as best I can, using words I think all those people can understand, and it's enabled them to do much more with their skills because I've given them a little bit more domain context. This is true for bringing technical people who already understand the product and the problem space really well into the world of contributing to documentation. Because we need to teach them the design patterns, the practices, the things we already know that make this easier. I've been writing documentation for a long time. I now don't find it hard. But for someone who knows their topic really well, to write well for specific audiences, that's a skill and it's something that improves with practice. So giving the design patterns. To make this easier, we built on the best knowledge we could find in the industry, and we adapted a content framework called Diataxis. If you have seen the Divio docs, then they are built on this as well, but Daniele doesn't work at Divio anymore, so it's got its own brand. The concept here, and I've taken the image straight off that website, the concept here is that you have 4 clear content types that tackle both the theoretical and the practical at different stages of the user journey. So are you new to this thing, or are you just here for instructions on how to do a thing that you know but you're just looking it up? Those are 2 different things. You need different types of content at different stages of the journey. This can seem kind of rigid, but you know, it's been a beautiful guardrail for us. Everybody who comes to contribute to the site has to choose what type of content they're creating. Every review checks that it is clear which content it is. And the result of having anyone at Aiven create or publish any item is that we ended up with something vaguely consistent and usable to our audience. So we've sort of cut the effort level for anyone. We also have templates for each of these types of content. You can find those in our contributors file. And the goal is to help people write easily, to write efficiently. We also have a mini style guide. Now, if you've worked with documentation professionals, they get very cross. Style guides should be thorough. There should be no room for ambiguity. They're usually book-sized. Mine is quite small, but this is kind of the headings, only slightly squashed to make them fit on the slide. Mine is quite small, but some engineers have read it, which makes it almost unique in the world of documentation style guides. It's intentionally minimal. It only picks out the things that we would really show are showstoppers for merging. Things that would stop it from feeling consistent or get us away from our brand voice. Instead of teaching every engineer in the company what a brand voice is, We've got some guidelines. They're publicly available. Contributors and reviewers can look at them. Every section has clear examples. They're almost all very silly. And that has really helped people to understand what we expect from them. The what not to do is mostly exclamation marks and emoji. I feel like I have to ask for those to be taken out really often. I am an abuser of both of those features of written content, but documentation is a serious business, and so neither of those are welcome. With the content structure gives us a very consistent navigation. Every product has its own section. Aiven is multiple products. We have hosted Postgres, MySQL, Redis, OpenSearch, Kafka, all the Kafka things. ClickHouse, M3, I'm forgetting some fabulous topics that, never mind. There's a lot of them. Each section has a landing page, some getting started, and then it has the how-to guides. It has some reference. Every product has the parameters reference that you need to use it with the API. I would love to say that our information architecture is incredible. It isn't. Please don't click on the platform section. We need to read the books about information architecture and then fix that part, because I'm not sure what good practice looks like. It isn't this. What we did do was try to put our very technical audience in control by offering amazing search functionality. I feel contractually obliged to say it's an Aiven for OpenSearch. If you've used Elasticsearch, then OpenSearch is the open source fork of that project. Aiven offers it as a service, so obviously I'm using it because it's brilliant. It also allowed us to index multiple searches, and it's just really good at finding things. So you just dream your technical words into the search box, and it typically finds stuff. We did a migration from an old knowledge base into this docs platform. So while that was still in progress, rather than trying to sync both platforms or any other of the possible terrible solutions, the search box finds things in both places, and we told everyone to use that, which is also kind of an engineering solution. Let's talk a little bit more about the tooling. Aiven Docs uses a Docs as code workflow. This is existential. I never, ever want to work with any volume of content that isn't in a setup like this. I can work with it from any editor. It's possible for multiple users to collaborate on different branches. I can grep it. I can diff it, right? It was fine at the beginning. We're sort of past 500 pages now. People rename products. Oh, hang on. It's very easy for us to find all of the instances of a particular string, or because I'll talk about source control in a minute, but like build a whole new section and then launch it all at once. The downside with Docs as code is that not all documentation experts use tools like this yet. So it is possible to hire tech writers who really like rich text editors. And so it's not that they can't learn this, but it's something that tripped us up at the beginning, that people who could learn it, it turned out not all of them want to spend all day in a text editor. I personally enjoy it. And the other bonus of having that choice of tools is people like me who have some accessibility needs can use the editor that works for them. It's not a proprietary platform. Everything's in source control. I have a very relaxed governance on the way that we manage the changes, because when you make a change on one page, unlike when you work with source code, you're very unlikely to cause side effects on another page. Whereas that's in code, that's much riskier. It's very easy to work on many parallel changes. You can make edits or add whole pages and then combine them together. I'm telling the story of being very informal and welcoming to lots of contributors, but there's a serious side to this as well. Like many companies, we're ISO 27001 registered. We're actually quite a serious company. We have your data. We are serious about many things. The brand is nice and friendly, but you can bet we're doing everything properly. By using Docs as code and GitHub, we know exactly what was live on our public-facing site at any time. We know who wrote that change, and we know who put it there. We have a full audit of exactly what was changed, when, and by whom. You can only write to this repository, although it's public and we accept contributions, you can only merge to main if you are an Aivener and you have that level of access. So in a funny way, when I was pitching this, let's do open source, community-based documentation, let's have Docs as code, let's do it this way, the security team were huge supporters because it gave them such a great insight and they manage our access. So it was a big confidence boost for them. We have the full history of all the pages. We are using GitHub. Other good source control platforms are available. Using Git or GitHub and the sort of groupware tools around that gives us the best collaboration tools I have ever seen. Please don't ask me to word track changes ever again. Google Docs with comments is not how we change the world. There isn't time. Just source control, that's where it's at. Because it's all text-based markup, we're using a static site generator. So the docs are just pages and pages of text files with markup. We are actually using restructured text because Markdown is frankly not fit for purpose. And ASCII doc is too complicated for, well, the tooling's not that mature either. It's obviously the best choice, but there isn't the support there. Also, Aiven is a Python shop. So the majority of our staff, technical staff, would write restructured text anyway. The only existing documentation I could find was exactly well-organized directories with restructured text files in. So we went down the Sphinx and restructured text route. Other really awesome static site generators, Gatsby, Jekyll, Hugo, 11T. What I love about these is they bring the content separate from the presentation. We've redone how the website branding thing ships this week. We don't go around editing styles in content. The content is just headings, words, code samples, bullet points, maybe a table. And the presentation does all the rest. So we're not waiting for designs that we can fit content into. We're just shipping it. Some of these platforms, and we're using Sphinx, which is very much batteries included, allow you to reuse content. It also supports output to different formats. It supports localization. We're probably going down that route soon. But it's all just text. So it's very easy to handle those large change sets. And again, if you have technical people, they know how to deal with enormous change sets if necessary. The only time we do anything really big is if we're launching a new product and the docs will be getting ready on a branch. It's still public. If you're wondering what we're working on, I mean, it's very rarely a secret, right? Because we've normally done some sort of product announcement. But when the docs are landing, you can always just find that there's a branch called that on our public repo because we're just gathering everything to sync with the main product launch. The biggest mistake we made on this project is not appreciating that we did need web developers to build a website. Sphinx is amazing, and it's out of the box. It has all the functionality you'd want. But if you look at their main website, none of the style. I've been a web developer, but not recently. And yeah, I wish that we'd had more We're now doing a bit of a rebrand and it's starting to look much better, but I wish that we'd had that skill set in our cross-functional team as well, much earlier. So thinking about the platform as well as just sort of the content and the review process and that side, where's the knowledge coming from? Who can tech review? But we sort of missed that although we were building from open source components, we still needed someone who was going to care about how it looked, and that we don't get that out of a box. It's fine. Aiven has a lovely web console, and we kidnapped those people to help us in the end. Win. While I'm thinking about text-based markup, I want to tell you about the text-based diagrams that we're using. They produce stuff like this little flow diagram that I have at the bottom of this screenshot. Sometimes a diagram just puts across a concept in a way that would be hard with words. It's called Mermaid.js. You describe your diagram in text, and it renders like this. That's very nice. And already it's like, that's cool. The extra things about this are, I can restyle this. I fairly obviously haven't. But I could restyle this. If we wanted to change our diagram styles, we can do that in one place, in the presentation layer, without needing to change anything about our existing diagrams. When we need to update something, because somebody renames a product. This is happening to me a lot, can you tell? When we need to update something, we don't need to find where the image file is, find who made it, talk to a designer. You just edit it, it can go in the text file, it shows in the diff along with the rest of your pull request. They are not the prettiest diagrams in the world, but in terms of maintainability and speed of shipping, I don't think we could have done better. One thing I really enjoy about this conference is people come with their war stories, the things they wish they'd done differently. We put this in on day one and I've loved it ever since. That's a rubbish story. I'm really sorry. One thing that I think holds many teams back from using tooling like this is feeling that non-technical people won't be able to work it. I mean, first of all, if you tell them they can't, they definitely can't, so there's that. I really think that they can. If you've ever seen the kinds of tools that marketing websites or CMSs or technical writers are working with, those things are complicated, they're arcane, they're proprietary. Seriously, they can handle this. What we've done for hours, and I think the most important thing for me, I'm a software engineer, I'm an open source project maintainer, I used to teach Git for GitHub, right? I know a lot about Git. But the people that I'm involving in this project don't need to know all of those things. So it's more about what do they need to know, how can I teach them what I know? And this tripped us up when we started having engineers onboarding other people. Actually, with a good editor setup, syntax highlight for whichever markup language you choose. I'm sorry I was so rude about Markdown. It is bad though. And side-by-side preview. This is a pretty workable toolchain for almost everybody. Sometimes we need a bit of help with Git support. We've got some people using the GitHub plugin for VS Code. We've got some people using GitHub Desktop separately. The advantage of GitHub Desktop is Git's own learning materials have some really good resources for that, so people can teach themselves and get help. So remember, it doesn't really matter. Sphinx also has an auto-build plugin, so the engineers just install the dependencies and then run it with auto-build. Every time they save a file, the website reloads. So for that cohort, I don't help them with anything, but the instructions are in the README, and that's quite useful. That's what I use myself. For people who are making small edits or creating one file at a time, perhaps on an occasional basis, the GitHub web interface is absolutely fit for purpose. One thing we did do on this project, is set up a preview feature. So every pull request deploys a whole new copy of the site. You can see how the changes are going to look, how the site looks with these changes. There are lots and lots of versions of the site. This is incredible because it allows people who aren't running it locally both to contribute and see what they've done and to review someone else's changes. I basically did it because Netlify had a button for it. So it's not like I really thought through the benefits. I'm telling you another totally rubbish war story. It's more like a park walk story. I don't know. It's been amazing. I will absolutely, this should have been in our requirements. This should have been on our radar. It sort of showed up here by mistake. But it's such a big enabler for someone who doesn't really get it, hasn't taken the time to set it up recently, but thinks we've got something wrong, fixes it, pushes it. We can immediately see if it renders. We've got a lot of CI on it for the build. So we can see, how did that go? Oh, it didn't, your title's not quite right, but here's how you fix it, right? Because you can immediately get that feedback. It is easy to run locally, but it might be easy when you know how. And it's enabled, I want to call my colleagues non-technical, because they're incredibly technical, just not about software. Also, some of the people who use this feature are super technical, but they're now in leadership positions and they don't really have that stuff set up on the laptop anymore. So it's like not quite confident or too busy, or they think they're not technical. All those people can use these features. Because we've gone down the docs as code route, there's lots of other ways that we can build on these technical tools. And we have a bunch of automation on our docs platform. I have seen most of this in small pieces on other people's projects, but I haven't seen another project that has it quite so much all together. So we have a bunch of continuous integration built in. First of all, we check that we can build Sphinx. This wasn't in the check for a really long time. Like, we broke the build on main before I realized, oh, we should check this actually builds. It's like, I don't really know how we didn't have that. We have the build preview, which is, like I say, it opens the door. It reminds me of doing that when we first started doing design first with APIs, and we could show everyone how the change was going to look, rather than throwing some requirements into the coding den and hoping something good came back. We could say, this is exactly how it's going to look, and the errors will look like this, and we'll pass the filter parameters like this, and everybody could look at it at once and understand it. The preview build is like that. It lets you bring all the stakeholders to the table. They don't need to read your text-based markup format if they don't want to. You can just put the page in front of the product person and be like, this is what we're publishing. As if it was a Word document, almost. It's ready to go. It allows everyone to collaborate. One thing we also have is hyperlink checking. Again, super fun when you have 50 pages. No fun at all at 500 pages. So we had to turn this one down. If you open a pull request, it will check the hyperlinks in the pages that you've edited. So we're typically only looking at 2 or 3 articles worth of links. We're not looking at the whole documentation site worth of links, because we were blowing through, all sorts of API restrictions. It starts to do sleep between the calls. It takes a long time to run the build. If you're pushing a commit, fixing a typo, pushing a commit, fixing a typo, I'm checking 800 links on every commit. Like, no, we're definitely doing this wrong. What we've done instead is we do a full check on a cron job. So on a Tuesday, the GitHub Actions bot runs some of those sort of full hygiene tests. We don't need to run it on every change. But if one of our upstream projects has changed all their links, or we're linking through to a resource that's gone away, we need to know. So then we pick that up. Why does it run on a Tuesday? Wednesday is no meetings day at Aiven. If the bot tells us on Tuesday, there's some chance that somebody will fix it on Wednesday. We had it, I can't remember where we had it, but anyway, runs on a Tuesday, we fix things on Wednesdays. The other really cool thing we have in our CI setup is something called Vale. Vale is a linter for prose. So it checks all of our words against a dictionary. We can teach it new words. It also checks for case. So if you teach it GitHub with a capital G and a capital H, it will check that you've always spelt it that way. This is really important. We're a pretty serious company. We're pretty serious about branding, but we don't have all of our docs changes going through like a central perfect language gatekeeping function. Like somebody reads it, probably tests the code that's in the article. That's basically it. So having that extra quality check has been brilliant. It checks the correct use of trademark terms. We are hosting upstream projects, right? So we have to use Apache Cassandra, Apache Kafka, Apache Flink. We have to use their trademarks correctly and responsibly. And we want to, but everybody who can contribute to the docs might not know exactly how the trademark marking should be used or how the product names have been decided by the brand team. That's fine, the bot does that. We also have a rule that all our headings should be in sentence case. This is tedious, and none of us are specialist writers, so this is going to get missed. Like, if you can't implement this rule, don't have it, because there's no point. Vale can do this. So you open the pull request, and the Vale checker will come back and say, you can't say Aiven Kafka. It has to be Aiven for Apache Kafka with the registered trademark symbol. Your titles must be in sentence case. This one is, I don't know, all uppercase or all lowercase, or I've seen it all. And it lets us give a real feeling of quality for the easy things that the machine can do for us. And this is just like code linting. Like, we could pick that up automatically. Great, let's do that. Vale also suggests replacements for frequent mistakes. It picks up quite a lot of things where they're not in the dictionary. So I mistype Kafka as Kakfa really often, and that gets picked up because it's not a dictionary word. However, we have taken the executive decision to ban the English word flick completely from our site. It's a valid word, it should be in the dictionary. However, since we offer Apache Flink, and finger muscle memory seems to work that way, when we had this conversation, we had six instances of the word flick, and all of them should have been flink. So we made the commitment that we never need to use this English word, and it will always say, did you mean flink? Because we, so far, always did, and it picks that up. And it does a bunch of those typo, common replacements, abbreviations. Like, this isn't a word, but you probably meant PostgreSQL spelled correctly with the capital letters. What this does mean is that almost every pull request that gets opened on this repository will fail the build, including mine. I'm quite relaxed about it. Some people get quite offended. You can run all these tools locally if you care enough. There is detailed setup on the README of how to get your pull request perfect and building before you push it. Who does that? Not me, not many of my contributors either. But it's fine. Vale annotates your diff. Then maybe a tech reviewer will also annotate your diff. We just get in the conversation with the bot, and together we take all those inputs and bring something better together. We have continuous deployment as well. So as soon as a pull request is merged to the main branch, it automatically deploys to live. It's a static site, so we just build a completely fresh copy of the site, and that becomes our live version. We deploy multiple times most days. Depends if we're busy. A lot. DevRel. So I work in developer relations, and we do the majority of the docs work. So we deploy a lot less often in conference season because there's nobody in the office. We're not reviewing and merging pull requests. This is why DevRel should not do business as usual processes. But we love this one. And it means it's very easy. A big change, a small change, it doesn't matter. Press the big green button. It'll be live in 2.5 minutes. And we just do it. I mean, yeah, I do deploy on Friday night when I know no one else is in the office, and I don't worry about it. It's really solid. Right now, we're deploying to Netlify. They changed their pricing. We are moving to Cloudflare, but we've got a couple of Netlify functions. So we're now in a weird situation of deploying half of it to Lambda, half of it somewhere else. So we talk about the static sites, but the dynamic pieces are the search function and the feedback form. So we just have those two little touches. I've talked a lot about the community, the open source aspect. Aiven's docs are a public repository. I wouldn't say we're necessarily building community and like encouraging people to write our docs for us, but our customers patch things. You know, people fix stuff or suggest things. It's all great. It's open for a reason. The majority of these contributors do work for Aiven, not everybody. The repository is also, the content is Creative Commons licensed by attribution. We are a company, but it's out there. People can use our stuff and accredit us if they want to. We do encourage contributors. A lot of that effort goes on our internal contributors. They are our biggest contributors. Also, our external ones are people who understand the tech, understand that the docs are on GitHub, and know how to open a pull request. We don't need to encourage them. They read the README, set things up, and open the pull request, as I would do on someone else's site. Our internal contributors are a wider selection of talents, let's say it like that. The way that we try to encourage them, our repository is well tended. The issues list is well maintained, everything there is valid. We have some things tagged as good first issue. If you open a pull request, it gets reviewed. We have clear guidelines for contributors. We also have clear guidelines for reviewers. So you can see what we're looking for when we're reviewing, and they're also there. Internally, we run office hours. Every other week, we run an office hour. People drop in with their docs, questions, problems, demands. I don't know. Different things happen. I fix a lot of Git branches in those sessions, but it's whatever we can do to get that part out of your way so that you can do what you need to do. That's important. Because the thing about contributors is when they have a good contributor experience, they grow in confidence and they carry on being contributors. They also grow up to be maintainers someday. And that's really important for the sustainability of the project and how we can encourage everyone to be part of it. If you want to fix something that helps our customers, everybody at Aiven should be able to do that. There's a principle of shared responsibility. The reviewer guidelines are in the repository. Anybody with the right access to the repo can review and approve a pull request. It needs a single approval, and when it's approved, the approver merges. So anyone at Aiven can accept and immediately deploy any change. I really like it when they read the reviewer guidelines first, but we can do it, and that's what we've done. That's the model that we have embraced. If you're familiar with the essay, the cathedral and the bazaar, we're definitely the bazaar. It's a lot of contributors, almost as many reviewers, and everybody is empowered to accept and deploy that change immediately. The one extra step we sometimes have, we're a very global company. We employ hardly anyone with English as a first language. Editorial review is available. Just tell us. So not everything goes through that But if you, as either an author or a reviewer, think that we should have another look at the language, we've got people who can do that. So it goes through one more step. The reason the governance here is so relaxed is it is just a website. We can iterate, right? It's just content. This would give me nightmares if I did it on a code repo. I definitely wouldn't. We don't really need governance. The project doesn't need direction. Building resources that help our technical audience should be all of the directions all of the time. This is about developer experience. If somebody wants to improve someone's developer experience, they should be able to do that. The person who owns this project just needs to make sure you facilitate and make it happen. Engineering tools do make a big difference. They do make documentation better. But as always, it is not only about the technology. It's about including people, about enabling people. It's about collaborating. It's about the experience, of course, of the end users. That's the mission. Aiven's tagline is make developers' lives better. This is the best way I know to do that. But it's also about enabling all of the contributions and the developer experience of the contributors to the project and bringing those things together. I've shared my tips, the squidgy people ones, as well as my favorite tools. And I hope there's been something there that has given you something to think about. I've got a big list of resources here. Obviously, the docs site and the GitHub repo, now you've heard so much about it. I've written blog posts about a few of these topics, so that's on lornajane.net. I'd like to recommend a book, Docs for Developers. It's very good and covers everything I wish I'd known. It published after I'd started this project. And I'll also mention Tom Johnson's blog, I'd Rather Be Writing. It's a really good and approachable way to learn about best practice in documentation. The only other thing I need to ask you to do is rate the talk, because otherwise I won't get invited back. Thanks very much for your time.